Hello, 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 hello.
Welcome back to another Motorblog video where we're rounding up the best new bikes for 2022, and today it's the Turn Alfie Adventure bikes. Now we'll go in price order ascending, and this one does get a little spending. And if you watch all the way through, I'd love to know from you at the end which one would be your pick. Now before we get started, a quick thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video, more about them later. Now first up at just over £6 we've got the Honda CB500X. Now I actually had one of these from Honda a couple of weeks ago. I haven't got around to editing the video, but as a little preview to that review, I thought it was absolutely excellent. It's got a peppy little engine, the parallel twin, and it's super economical. The brakes have been upgraded for this year, so you now get twin discs, so the braking is just as good as a lot of more expensive, bigger bikes. You also get a new Showa
Alo.
upside fork for the new
Alo.
model year, and it looks
Alo,
very
đang nói ở xa.
purposeful. You know, it makes the front end
Alo,
look a
đang
bit
nói ở
more
gần.
butch, but also the ride is right in that sweet spot of comfortable but accurate. It's comfy, it'll do motorway speeds, it's got a big 17.7 litre tank, and it sips fuel, so there's absolutely loads to like about it. Now for balance, you could argue there's not a lot in the way of tech, but at this price point for this sort of bike, I don't think it's really that important. All round, I think it's just a great bike, and I think it also looks
Ok,
very
âm thanh
nice,
khá tốt.
especially in this
Bây giờ
pearl
là
organic
thử
green
webcam.
finish. So yeah, a great option if you're looking for your first adventure bike and you want something that's not too big or intimidating, but also there is plenty of fun to be had for the more experienced rider, and it'd make a great little commuter. Now for another 1500 quid, you could step up to a 650, the Kawasaki Versys 650 to be precise. You know, it does have some similarities with the Honda. It's primarily road focused, and it has a parallel twin engine with the 180 crank, but it just has a bit more presence and more of that big bike feel. Now it's by no means the most powerful or most exciting bike in the segment, but it's got a good following for being super reliable and good value for money. It's just one of those bikes that gets the job done. For 2022, it's much the same, so 66 horsepower, the chassis is pretty much unchanged, but you do now get a redesigned fairing and windscreen that visually pulls it in line with the other Versys models. You also get a TFT dash with phone connectivity and now 2-mode switchable traction control. So some neat updates to keep it competitive, and they did really need to do that because there's a new player in this market, and that's the Triumph Tiger Sport 660. Now admittedly, we're starting to play a little fast and loose with the term adventure bike. This is more of a tall sports tourer, but Triumph have it in their adventure category on their website, and so it's in this list, and you're just gonna have to make your peace with it. Either way, let's not get distracted from the fact that it is a brilliant motorcycle. You know, it takes the super popular Trident platform and jacks it up a bit, slaps on a fairing, bulks out the subframe to carry a passenger and luggage, and hey presto, you've got yourself a much more versatile bike. Now I was actually lucky enough to ride the prototype version in the summer, and of course I was already pretty familiar with the Trident, but that extra bit of wind protection from the fairing, the extra room you've got with the riding position, and the extra fuel capacity, it really transforms it into something that feels quite different, but also, you know, much more long-range capability. Now set against the competition, so the Versys 650 and the Tracer 7, it's more powerful, it's got more techie features, and you get Triumph's signature handling and attention to detail on the finish, but it is more expensive. I mean, you can't have it all. Now here's a couple of bikes that I don't have a price for yet. They're still at the sort of like late concept stage, but I'd expect more details this model year. The first one being the MV Agusta 5.5. So this is their new small to mid capacity adventure bike, and it's heavily based upon the Benelli TRK 502, so same engine and frame design, and both bikes will be produced by the Chinese manufacturer QJ Motor. This one will be in the sort of 40 odd horsepower range, and in many ways quite similar to the CB500X, but MV Agusta is a bit more of an aspirational brand and a bit more premium, and so you'll get more premium components. So decent KYB fully adjustable suspension, Brembo radially mounted brakes on 320mm discs, And more tech, so like a 5-inch TFT display with phone connectivity for turn-by-turn nav. Now, somewhat related, we just talked about the Benelli TRK 502, which the MV shares its engine and chassis with, but we've also got the new TRK 800 from Benelli, and this one looks pretty interesting as well. So again, built by QJ Motor, but with the extra capacity, you've got more power, so 76 horsepower peak, and that's starting to get competitive with the middleweights like the Yamaha Tenere 700. And the rest of it looks pretty good, so adjustable suspension courtesy of Marzocchi. This one gets Brembo brakes as well on big 320mm discs, a 7-inch TFT display, and all in a package that I think looks pretty smart. Now, I'd probably have written off Benelli bikes as a heritage brand on essentially a Chinese bike, but this one's got my interest a bit. Now, I just mentioned the Tenere 700, widely regarded as one of the best middleweight adventure bikes, if not the best, certainly in terms of off-road ability. So why mess with a winning formula? They haven't. This year, they've just given the standard bike and the 11 grand rally version a fresh lick of paint, and that's pretty much it. But the thing is, it's a basic bike, and the fundamentals of it, so the CP2 engine and the chassis design, those are the things that make it great, not having loads of tech. In fact, it's barely got any, just ABS. So there's not really any need to keep making however, a new kid on the block, and that's the Aprilia Touareg 660. It does a lot of the same stuff, and mechanically they're very similar, so a 270-degree parallel twin engine makes a little bit more power, but not much. Similar suspension, similar brakes, similar wheels, slightly off-road focused, and similar in stature as well. But where they really differ is the tech. So like I say, the Tenere is proper bare bones, but the Aprilia gets a TFT dash, it gets like 4 levels of traction control, 3 levels of engine braking, 3 levels of engine maps, and then various ABS settings. There's phone connectivity as well, and that opens up turn-by-turn nav on the screen, but perhaps most importantly for me, a simple feature, but the fact that it has a ride-by-wire throttle means that they can implement cruise control, whereas the Tenere, I think it's still a cable throttle, so they can't do cruise control. Now, it is about $1,000 more expensive than the Yamaha, but that's the beauty of the situation. Some people don't want any tech, they just want the best mechanical components at the lowest possible price, and so in that case, just go for the Tenere. If, however, it feels a little basic and you're willing to pay that little bit extra, obviously, go for the Aprilia. Now, it's a decent step up to the next one, and that's the Norden 901 from Husqvarna. It ought to make for a cracking bike. It's heavily based upon the 890 Adventure from KTM, over 100 horsepower from the parallel twin, and brilliant handling, be that on-road or off. And a big part of that is down to the fuel tank that hangs down either side quite low and keeps the center of gravity super low. It really removes that top heaviness that you can get from some adventure bikes, especially when they're fully fueled. But for me, the KTM's not exactly a looker, so hopefully the Norden delivers pretty much the same riding experience, but just in a much more aesthetically pleasing package. So yeah, this one's in my top 5, maybe even top 3 bikes that I'm looking forward to testing this year. Now, as I said at the top, a massive thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. If you've never used a VPN service before, then effectively it allows you to protect your connection and privacy whilst you're using the internet. Not only does it provide additional encryption to make sure no one else can see what you're doing, but it also anonymizes your browsing so big companies can't track you around the web. And on top of that, it also filters out malicious traffic to ensure that websites aren't loading harmful stuff in the background that will damage your computer. Not only that, but you can connect to their servers all around the world so you can access regionally locked content. That means more shows on your favorite streaming services, and you can access regionally locked websites as well. I've been using it plenty since we partnered up a few months back, and it's super fast, super reliable, easily good enough to stream video from around the world. And that we've got a great promotional offer for you, so a huge discount on their 2-year deal, plus a month free to get you started. There's a link in the description, or you can just use the code MOTOBOB. Alright, so back to the bikes, and at just 150 quid more than the Husqvarna, we've got the Ducati Multistrada V2. Now, you might be forgiven for thinking that it's a brand new